Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and I'm taking care of business. Joining me today is Jennifer Hunt, Chief Intelligence Officer of the Real Estate Wealth Lab and founder of Ventures with Adventures. Thanks for joining us again today, Jennifer.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much again for having me, Mario. Always appreciate it.
All right, we're going to talk about real estate here in Calgary. And one of the interesting trends that we're seeing out there, and it's not only in Calgary, it's across the country, I'm assuming, is young adults are buying homes these days. And it's kind of goes against the grain of traditional thinking that people, of a certain age group, say in their 20s, maybe even their early 30s, want to rent and that's the lifestyle, but we're seeing more who want to own a property. Tell me why that's happening.
Well, there are a number of reasons why it's happening. And in part, the vast majorities of studies show that Canadians in particular, and Americans as well, inherently view the value of real estate. And owning a home remains, the American dream, the Canadian dream, the Albertan dream, if you will. And so as individuals sort of grow into that, they recognize that they would like to get into real estate in some way, shape, or form. And what's happening is that real estate prices are rising and have been rising for a number of years. What's happening is individuals are looking at how do they get in, because affordability is at an all-time challenge, let's put it that way. So there's lots to talk about with regards to affordability and how individuals are getting very creative, and house hacking and co-living and co-ownership, and all these different models are coming together for sure.
Well, let me just throw that out to you. Like, obviously, we're talking, prices are at all-time highs, throughout the country. In Calgary, the benchmark price, I believe last month was the highest it's ever been.
Yeah,
So
72% higher. Oh, that's for the home sales. We're 72%
yeah.
higher, and the benchmark price is up extraordinarily high
So how
for
are
a long time.
so how are young people, like people in their 20s, able to afford this and buy a home?
Well, there's a number of ways. And I'd like to, let's see. Well, I'd like to sort of talk about Calgary and get more into just the Calgary market, if you will. Because on a whole scale national level, Calgary is actually one of the most affordable places for real estate.
Yeah.
Based on its wages are higher than the national average. Calgary is actually higher than the provincial average and higher than the national average. So already their incomes are better suited to home ownership, and the prices, the affordability, they're actually lower. The prices for real estate are lower than most of the other provinces. So you put those two beautiful factors together, and actually Calgary affordability, it's within range. And so you're actually seeing Calgary in particular, but Alberta generally is seeing some of the highest population it's seen in a very long time. And in fact, it exceeded the population of Calgary exceeded 1.3 million for the first time in 2021 last year. And that's growing exponentially because people are moving where they can afford to live and to buy homes, because as I mentioned earlier, all individuals tend to see the inherent value of real estate. And so that is really what's happening in Calgary. But then there's an extra special component of the Calgary market in particular, is that a number of years prior to the pandemic in 2020, and then the government restrictions that were imposed upon in response to that COVID-19 situation, prior to that, there was a glut of condominiums in the Calgary market. So they were sort of below market value. They needed a couple of years for that to be absorbed. And then what happened during the pandemic is people were sort of going, okay, well, where can I put my money? Where can I shift my money? But millennials and Gen Zs saw the opportunity, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about those in a moment. They saw the opportunity because guess what happened during the pandemic is that a lot of folks moved out of downtown cores, leaving even more condominiums that needed to be absorbed in Calgary. So they had a price reduction, basically supply demand, basic economics, and so condos went down in Calgary even further. And this is actually across the board in Vancouver, Toronto, like all the big markets. And so in about January 2020, it was actually about sorry. So sometime in 2020, I was able to forecast that by September 2021, which is what we just saw, that what we would see is millennials, is what I call them. So older Gen Zs and younger millennials saw that opportunity of Calgary, well, condos in general being below market. Nobody wanted them. They saw that opportunity and they went in. And in September 2021, sure enough, the smart millennials started buying up condos because they're the most affordable price range. And there was a softening for a short time that we got to see.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because a lot of the people, and a lot of the surveys I've seen recently, I keep showing that this younger demographic wants to be in home ownership. But what's also interesting is that, granted, the condo market is traditionally, where they go to first, but many are being attracted to that single detached home market as well.
Yeah, they are. So let's look at demographics a little bit. So millennials are sort of between 26 to 41-ish. So that's a pretty broad range. 41-year-olds and 26-year-olds have different preferences. And Gen Zs are about, they're currently, I think, around 10 years old to 25 years old. Well, there aren't any 10-year-olds who are out there buying properties, are there? So, well, not very many. There are a couple, I do know them at any rate. But 2020, so we want to look at the 20-year-olds, maybe 23, so the older Gen Zs, and the younger millennials, so up to about 31, that demographic from 21-ish to 31, let's call it that. And that's what I've called the millennials, because it's the younger millennials, the older Gen Zs, Gen Zs. Yeah. And if you put those together, they have very similar buying patterns. So when we look at real estate and real estate investing, we want to actually take out the traditional demographics and start parsing them out and looking a little bit deeper. And we're seeing those buying patterns. Now, those ones, when you combine the millennials, they're the ones buying the condos. And they're also doing very untraditional sort of co-ownership and looking at that. But back to your point, Mario, of course, with single family, the older millennials, so from 31 to 40, they're the ones who are having the families. They've got a little bit more of their career under them, and with the restrictions with the pandemic, the government imposed restrictions, they went even more into wanting to have single family, having the backyards, et cetera, and some more space. So we kind of need to look at these buying patterns a little bit independently, but they are both happening, of course. But there is a very interesting and unique time for these millennials in the market, in particular with condos.
Okay, I'm going to ask you just a question in general about the real estate market. We're in Calgary, for example. We just came off another spectacular month in February. Not only was it a record for number of sales ever for a February, but it was a record for MLS sales for any month of the year, and it's like not February, I meant March, but also February was also a record month. So we have two in a row, but March had the most sales ever for any month in Calgary. What is happening out there? Why is this frenzy of activity continuing in this market? And bear in mind, 2021 for the entire year was the most sales ever for a year.
You ask so many questions. I wish we had an hour, Mario, but I know we don't, so I'll try and keep them succinct. There's a couple of reasons. We'll speak broadly at first and then get into Calgary, I think. So broadly, demographic-wise, Canada has had some of the highest immigration ever in its history in 2017, 2018, and 2019. And then in 2020, the government restrictions, closed borders, etc. We had nominal, if not almost nothing, in terms of immigration in 2020. And in 2021, although the numbers look high, it wasn't actually newcomers to Canada. It was just, for the most part, permanent residents, change of status. So those are individuals, why that's important for real estate investors, is those individuals were already here. So it doesn't have the same implications for rental housing or for purchasing. Okay, so that aside, so what we saw in 2020, what happens is, let me go back. So immigrants, about 77% of immigrants to Canada actually arrive with a down payment. And that same cohort, about 70 some odd percent, wait 3 years to purchase a home. So what we saw, and just based on those numbers and those statistics, 2017, we saw individuals who came, and they would have been buying in 2020. And we had record highs. 2018, we had record highs of immigration. So they would have been purchasing their homes in 2021, driving up demand, driving up prices. 2020. And then 2019, 3 years later, here we are, 2022. And we're going to see another year where we are going to have exceptional demand. So I forecast that next year, 2023, we will see a softening in the market because 2020 we did not have the same immigration. And in 2024, it will also be a little bit softened as well. Not falling off the cliff, but that will have an impact on demand, which of course influences supply, the prices of real estate. So then jumping into Calgary specifically, they have had exceptional GDP growth since the opening and whatnot, and they're leading the pack for Alberta, of course, with Edmonton. Their jobs are trending up, the rents are trending up, the population is trending up. Like I said, they're at 1.3 million for the first time since, ever. And then home sales are up and home prices are up and listings are down. And of course, listings being down, but demand being high, supply demand economics, we're going to see even further increases on those prices. But Calgary's been a really, really good market for a long time. It was just coming into a new, almost expansionary phase in the real estate cycle in December of 2019, and then of course with the restrictions imposed by the pandemic, it had a softening in terms of its economic activity, obviously, as everywhere did, and now it's starting to rise. And the one thing I love about Calgary's economic activity, a phone call there. Popular. What I love about Calgary's economic activity is that they have a really solid plan for diversifying its economy, and they're acting on it. And they've done a great job of looking at all kinds of different distribution centers and technology as well. So that is very helpful when we look, as it's a leading indicator for where rent and property prices will go in the future.
Interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting time for the real estate market. Boy, it's when we coming into the spring market here in Calgary, I can't imagine what it's going to be like for April, May, and June.
Well, and another factor, a couple of factors that most individuals don't look at, and that's what I love about being the Chief Intelligence Officer at the Real Estate Wealth Lab, is that we look at indicators that no one else does. And that includes, and I won't tell all of them because it's proprietary, but one of them I'll share, and that is, two of them actually. So that's inflation and interest rates, and how those are indicators of where rental and real estate markets will go. And what we're seeing right now is incredibly turbulent times, as you know, internationally and domestically. Etc. And what we're also seeing is an incredibly high inflation rate. And so what happens in turbulent times and inflationary periods is that typically real estate does very well during turbulent times. It's one of the most stable assets. And when in inflationary times, real estate also is one of the few, I shouldn't say only, one of the very few assets that actually outpaces inflation and at minimum keeps up with it. So the demand again is there because people tend to buy real estate to withstand turbulent times, and they know that inflation, it's a good investment. So we've got extra demand because of those conditions. And then we layer on, Mario, one other thing, and that's interest rates. And of course, that is that we're going to see interest rates go up, and that's increasing, etc., in order to, of course, bring down inflation. And as a result, people are wanting to get in before interest rates go up. So that's again putting added pressure on the market and the demand.
Yeah. All right. Super. Well, thanks, Jennifer, for your insights again.
Oh, my pleasure, as always, Mario.
All right, super. That was Jennifer Hunt, Chief Intelligence Officer for the Real Estate Wealth Lab and founder of Ventures with Adventures. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. This has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.